So first, thank you for this invitation. Although I kind of live, I live here, so I mean, it's more you that I feel like you are my guest. And actually, I will invite you at the end of the talk to the next door, where there is a little gallery, which is called Xanadu, and where we did a little exhibit. Something like an exhibition, I call that accrochage. I don't know how to translate that in English, hanging things on the walls. And it's more like a visit of an artist studio, and you will see. So Chrystelle was creating the exhibition, and I had the help of Alexander. And the title, so I'm going to talk about the network, because as an artist I was born on the internet, so it's a very important concept for me. And the title, When Ideologies Become Form, was found by Chrystelle. And the networks make the connection between ideologies on one side, politics, and forms and aesthetics on the other side. I'm going to explain you what I mean by that. Yeah, so it's the title is a clin d'œil to a very, very famous exhibition in the second part of the 20th century, which was called When Attitudes Become Form. And in this exhibition by Harald Zeman from 1969, there was 69 artists from conceptual art, land art, fluxus, happening, and so on. And this is really the moment where the question of the object, you know that there has been a huge shift from the idea of the object to the process and to the attitude in the 20th century. And this is really a key exhibition. And also it changes also the relation of the curator with the artist, because in a way Harald Zeman was kind of using artists and artworks to make his own work. You know, I mean, that's a bad way of telling that, but there is something like that. So these are pictures of this exhibition in Bern. And these are pictures of the exhibition we did at Xanadu, so next door. That was the first one. And the second one with some performances. Okay, you will see the room in a few minutes. Sorry. So as an artist, I started in like 20 years ago, and at that time I belong to a tradition, you know, I'm kind of the third generation of artists on the network, but on the network, a generation lasts 3 years, so it goes very fast. And I started in like 2000, and net art originates in 1995, you know, really at the beginning of the web. And at that time, everybody on the network, I mean artists and activists, were reading this book by Hakim about temporary autonomous zone. So the idea that after the breakdown of the utopias, mainstream utopias of modernity, massive, utopias, there was a way after postmodernity to go back to the question of utopia, but utopia had to be, they had to have their own programmed obsolescence. They had to be very short. They had to have a very short lifetime. Otherwise, it was based on the idea that pirates in the 16th century was going from island to island, and when they were catched back by the royal forces, they would destroy their paradise and go back to another island. Okay, so the idea of like bubbles of modernity, but very small scales. And Akilbe was kind of believing that the web, the original web, was a kind of temporary autonomous zone, and that was the beginning of the story. So I try to go very fast at the beginning, but I really need to show you very old pieces of mine, almost the first ones. So this is I hope you can see. That's better. This is a happening I did on Google. So I'm an artist activist. I don't hack databases. I mean, it's not illegal. It's like homeopathic hacks. Still, I'm called. We have many names for that, artivist or whatever. And this was 20 years ago when Google invented this new system where you could buy works. I mean, today everybody knows that, but you can buy works on Google and make some advertisement. And I tried to hijack the system and diffuse some pseudo poetry, and then the story is that I was censored by Google because my poetry wasn't good enough. And I was really pissed off, and by this censorship, I didn't know Ai Weiwei at that time. I mean, I'm glad you're here, by the way. And because Ai Weiwei, you know, in a way, this piece made me famous on the internet. You know, I had million visitors because of the censorship. You know, so in a way, censorship is good for an artist. But I didn't know that. I was very amateur. Before this, I was just somebody doing stupid things on the internet. And after this piece, I'm an artist. And now I don't do stupid things on the internet anymore. I do stupid things also outside the internet. I will show you. But then I wrote this text where I speak about semantic capitalism, and I give some price of words, and you can see more detail in the next room. So that was really fun, also really scary, and the relation with Utopie is kind of, I mean, to me it was a total change of perspective concerning the question of utopia and dystopia. Because, I mean, if capitalism goes that far into commodification, you know, and if we are really people, I mean, if we are human beings, beings of language, if we are made of words, in a way, this is kind of definitely ultimate stage of capitalism. There is no way capitalism could go further if we are made of words or dreams, right? Then if you are left-wing, that's a good news, because capitalism needs some place to, I mean, if it reaches some bottom, you know, that's the end of capitalism. So that would be good news. But maybe it's not like that, you know, so it's a bit strange. I don't have any conclusion about this piece, but I don't know if it's utopian or dystopic and 2 years later, I'm a bit lost in my, presentation. Where am I? 2 years later, I made another piece. I'm really sorry. Yeah. Where I said, so artists at that time, it was before Anonymous, it was before Julian Assange, it was before, you know, this fake news story. But artists, at that time, we kind of invented the fake genre, you know, on the internet. It was like a genre to diffuse fake websites. So that was a fake website for a fake product, where, maybe I can show it to you. I would sell a fake product with which you could share you could share la douleur, the pain of mankind, with a little patch which would be connected to the internet, and each time you have a bad news, you know, you can turn your keywords, and then you get an electric shock. And then 2 years after, I was able to exhibit this project, and I could electrocute for real thousands of people. So again, you know, yesterday at dinner we had a discussion with Natalia about can we enjoy dystopia. We had the beginning of a discussion about that. So that's what I was meaning. You can take pleasure from dystopia, and then, I mean, it's called you know, jouissance for Lacanian people. And then utopia goes in the second time, you know, because you feel so much guilt for enjoying dystopia that you really need utopia to, you know, like a smoke screen to make you believe that you are a real human being. You know. Okay, so let me go on. So this is a statement of the exhibition. When ideologies become form, explore the political and aesthetic forms of network, connected them to the visual history of ideologies and image-based propaganda. And I wanted to, so now I'm going to talk about the idea of network. And just to remind you what I mean by network, it's this, for instance. It's a network of, by network I mean some complex behavior, emerging behavior like that. So forms emerge bottom up from very, very complex behavior. But if you look locally, each bird has a very, very, very simple behavior. Still, you cannot predict the form that is going to happen. I mean, nobody is able to predict. Even the best computer cannot do that. I have another video which, this is for, I guess you know, you've been in this kind of traffic, right? In Vietnam, which is also an emerging phenomenon. Very simple rules, no rules at all. Still, everything goes well.
There are suggestions.
Sorry?
There are not rules, there are suggestions.
Yeah, actually, yeah, kind of a bit like in Marseille. When you drive in Marseille, it's a bit the same. You know, I'm sure. I mean, you've been in such traffic, right? And you survived.
Yeah.
Yeah. In Marseille, it's more. Yeah, because you are supposed to have rules. Still, there are no rules, so it's more schizophrenic situation. And this is the picture that we first saw for the communication of the workshop by Jonas Friedman, you know, who is a theoretician of architecture. And we couldn't use it because of copyright, which is very strange concerning Jonas Friedman anyway. But, so Jonas Friedman wrote a book called Utopies réalisables in '75. And I'm not going to talk about the book, but just to show you that from a very small micro-utopie, relational, you know, emerging local utopies, you can build a whole city, you know, by duality. You first take the dual of the network, which gives you like potatoes, and then you build the whole world. And Jonas Friedman is famous for having talk about that. And other networks, so this is, although probably you all know these distinctions between pyramidal and linear Fordism process and post-Fordism, which are very much more horizontal and emerging and messy. I'm going very fast because I guess now everybody knows that. This is a famous book, At the Origin of the Web, by a hacker, Eric Raymond, where he compared the cathedral and the very much hierarchical structure of the cathedral with the bazaar that the web was supposed to be. This is more the temporary autonomous version on the right, supposedly. And this is the well-known story of the internet. As you know, utopias were associated with a very horizontal and democratic view. And I'm talking about that because there was my story as an artist was that from scratch, from day one, I really was really puzzled because to me something didn't work, you know, and the very idea that we had this utopia of horizontality and distributed network, which was supposed to replace the centralized network and hierarchical, was kind of doomed from scratch. And I'm not going to talk about this, but if you read this book by this physicist, the claim is that any complex network can be a social network or animal network or ecosystem or sexual network or whatever. If you start from a democratic, utopian, libertaire, not libertarian, when at some point it reorganizes itself, when it grows as the most hierarchical and dominating structure, and there was a kind of blind spot, you know, even for scientists. It took hundreds of years to realize that this long tape that Pareto, Vilfredo Pareto, the economist, had discovered in the beginning of the 20th century, to understand that this long tail, which is the Amazon market, for instance, you have bestseller on the left, and you have all
my book.
Hmm?
You have my book on the right.
The what?
You have my book on the right.
And your book on the right, and many books like that. It's actually a fractal structure which is very, very, very hierarchical. Okay, so now let's go to something which I just thought of last week. So now I'm going to use memes only. So there is so the idea I want to try to explain is that as an artist, if I was a sculptor, I would use the three-dimensional space around me. But as a conceptual artist, I need some more other space. And while I was preparing this presentation, I thought, but what exactly this space could be in which my work lives? And a few months ago, I was a bit obsessed with these strange maps. Actually, it dates from 20 years ago. It's called Political Compass. I don't know if you are familiar with that. It's a meme on the internet. And you have meme like that. This is it's called a Game of Thrones political meme. I guess you can recognize some people here. I don't recognize all of them here. On the bottom right, I don't really know who it is. It's Margaret Thatcher, I don't know. But most of them are very recognizable. And you have another meme where you can really see the structure of the network and replace it in the quadrant in the ideological quadrant. And on the bottom left here, you have more egalitarian, left-wing, libertaire structures. Here you have more emerging libertarian in the sense of right libertarian, Anglo-Saxon, like emerging but non-egalitarian. And at the top you have very hierarchical structure of domination, and on the other side you have a very large, also very, there is a point of domination, but there is a very, very communitary aspect. And so this is a kind of, I'm going to show you a few pieces, the pieces of my pieces, and I hope you, I hope you will understand why I'm talking about all this. So this is large-scale structure of my space, very, very large social structure. And a few years ago, I read this book by Emmanuel, French historian, where he talks about family structures. And in this family structures quadrant, in fact, you just have to turn it around like this to make the connection. So in fact, you have I don't know if you are familiar with that, but you have here you have the nuclear family, absolute nuclear family, which is very inegalitarian. Here we have a nuclear family which is very much inegalitarian, which match very much with the right libertarian here. And so on the authoritarian family. So the theory of Emmanuel Todd is that ideologies of the 20th century come from family structure, right? So here you have Germany and Japan and things like that, which gave birth to authoritarian right, economic rights. And here you have famille nucléaire égalitaire, liberté, égalité, fraternité, which gave rise to the libertarian left, egalitarian left we have in France, for instance. And then you have the community family, which gave rise to Soviet Union and Vietnam and China and so on. So it matched very well. And I thought it was really great to have these memes, which would structure the space, the conceptual space I'm interested in, at very large scales in this quadrant, and at very small scales in the family structure. Okay, so when you zoom into the structure, you go into intimacy in family structure, and if you zoom more, you go into the semantic capitalism I was talking about at the beginning. Okay, so then there was one thing missing, which I'm going to use in my pieces, which is time. And I worked a lot with this big data thing. I made a few projects. This is, for instance, these are scientific studies about how communities build up and mix together and converge and diverge, just by studying, for instance, the citation network of academic papers. So these are called alveolar diagrams, and this is kind of visualization of history, starting from evolving networks. Okay, so let me finish with this and show you what you are going to see on the other room. So here, for instance, this is a project I started in 2015, and this is a drawing on a tam-tam of 4 different histories. You have the world history, economical history, technological history, artistic history, and each tam-tam is a convergence cycle, so it goes from 1929 to 1979, and then 2029, which is not over yet. These are drawings where I use this project, for instance. I use a lot of big data to try to make a map of language. It was exhibited at the Genopole. So it's a map of all possible idea association on the web. So we massively downloaded all the possible association from the Google database. So all the possible way, if you think of something, to think of something else. So this is the way Google predicts our behavior and predicts our desires. So we did this map, and these are drawings of topological structures of information at large scale on the web. But I don't use big data anymore. I think there was a remark by Robert yesterday about what would be the topology of this non-place, and this is exactly what I'm looking for here. And another project I just started, which is exhibited in the next room, starts from this idea of messing around with this family structure. So what would be the most stupid thing I could do, but using this general constraint? So this is a project called Transincarnations. So I use a ChatGPT to ask. So you know ChatGPT, right? So I asked ChatGPT what would be, for instance, the opposite family structure of Simone de Beauvoir. And he gave it to me. He knows the family structure of Simone de Beauvoir, and he can tell me, okay, if I want to reincarnate Simone de Beauvoir in some totally other family structure, totally other ethnic, what would it be? And then I take the answer. So he gives me an answer. I take the answer and I put it in Midjourney, which is another AI, that everybody is using now. I mean, you have all seen the photo of the Pope with the white. Running with the police running. This is the most stupid thing you can do. And I do that for a lot of figures of ideology of the 20th century or contemporary ideologies. So this is called Transincarnation. And this is another project. I'm not going to show it to you because you can see the video. And these are time-lapse. So what I'm interested in is how these networks, the alveolar networks of ideology and, of course, mixing aesthetics and politics develop in the space I tried to describe to you. And now if you follow one stream of information at large scale, then you can make a time-lapse video. So that's what I did. So I downloaded. So I took one of the streams I was working on, starting from, Fordism to Terminator. and I downloaded. I did a kind of process where I would download hundreds and hundreds of and thousands of images on each of these nodes of ideology, and I put them together, and I just make a video out of it. That's very simple as well, but I can make as many videos as there are different histories in these ideal diagrams. And yeah, and this is just a clin to the project I'm working here at Iméra. And I'm finished with my presentation. The project I'm working on is called Dreamlogs, and it's about the idea of making a topography of the unconscious of big tech, of GAFA. So I'm not going to talk about that, but this is very much, unfortunately, inspired by this guy, Edward Bernays, who was the nephew of Sigmund Freud, and who wrote this book, Propaganda, and who made this monstrous wedding between psychoanalysis and dreams and capitalism in 1929, which I try to reenact today with modern technology. So that's it. Thank you.